The body hit the floor before anyone in the corridor even turned their head. That was the thing about syndicate work. It was quiet, professional, the kind of clean that only came from practice. Nadia Volkov had seen messy violence before, bar fights on frontier docks, equipment accidents on cargo runs, the kind of ugly things that happen when people were angry or afraid. This was none of that. This was something else. This was erasure. She had been moving a crate of sealed coolant cells through the lower cargo corridor of Orvith. 9 when she heard the soft sound. Not quite a crack, not quite a hiss, and stopped. Around the corner, 2 figures in unmarked gray suits were already lifting the body of a Thraki male, small and brown-feathered, his neck at a wrong angle. A third figure was wiping down the wall with practiced, unhurried movements. Nadia did not gasp. She did not run. She stood very still, the way her grandmother had taught her to stand in the forest when something dangerous was nearby. Not frozen with fear, but quiet with purpose. Her thumb moved to the small recorder clipped inside her jacket collar. She pressed it once. She kept moving. Back on her ship, she sat at the small table in the galley and watched the footage on her handheld screen. The Thraki male was identifiable. She had seen his face on a public filing 2 weeks ago. A whistleblower who had submitted documents to a Galactic Trade Council about syndicate smuggling routes. His name was Ferric. He had been brave enough to put his name on the filing. That had been his mistake. Nadia forwarded the footage to 3 galactic press outlets, 2 human diplomatic embassies, and 1 anonymous data drop node that her grandmother had made her memorize the address of before she left Earth. "You will think you never need it," her grandmother had said, pressing a slip of paper into her palm. "Keep it anyway." She deleted the copies from her personal device. Then she made tea. Goro found her like that, sitting at the table, both hands around a warm cup, staring at nothing in particular. He filled the doorway with his broad frame, 2 of his forearms crossed, the other 2 hanging loose in what Nadia had learned meant he was unsettled. "I got a message," he said, "from a contact on the dock." "I know," she said. He stared at her. "They filed a mark. On you. Standard termination order, signed by Director Savek. Intel Division of the Orith Syndicate." He paused. "Nadia, that is not a small organization." "No," she agreed. "You do not look concerned." She looked up at him. "Sit down, Goro." He sat, which for a Thraki his size meant folding himself carefully into a space not designed for him. He managed it. He always did. "What are we going to do?" he asked. "I'm going to tell you a story," she said, "and then we're going to make a decision." He said nothing. He had learned, over 2 years of working with her, that when Nadia said she was going to tell a story, it was not decoration. It was instruction. "There's a being in Russian folklore," she began, "called Baba Yaga. She lives deep in the forest in a house that stands on chicken legs. The house turns to face away from visitors because it does not welcome them. She is very old. Some stories say she is death itself. Some say she is something older." Goro's feathers shifted. "Is this comforting?" "It does not feel comforting. The heroes in the stories," Nadia continued, "sometimes come to her for help. Sometimes they come because they are lost. Sometimes they come because they made a wrong turn." She sipped her tea. "But the foolish ones, the ones that do not know the forest, they come looking to catch her, to trap her, to take something from her without understanding what she is." She set the cup down. "What happens to the foolish ones?" Goro asked, though his voice suggested he already did not like the answer. "The forest helps her," Nadia said simply. "The house knows them before they arrive. The bones around the fence are a warning, but by the time you see the bones, you're already inside." Goro was quiet for a moment. "And you are telling me this because Director Savek looked at my cargo license and my height and my single crew manifest, and he decided I was trivial." She stood up, rinsed her cup, sat on the rack with the same calm she used for every small task. "He assigned an order on a woman he does not know. From a country with a very long memory. From a family with an even longer one." She picked up her flight jacket from the hook by the door. "Should we run?" Goro asked. The question was genuine. He was not a coward, but he was also not stupid. "Yes," she said, "but not away." He stared at her. "Then which direction?" She looked at the navigation screen on the wall, at the small glowing that marked the heart of Syndicate-controlled space. At the distance between here and there, which was not, she had already calculated very far at all. Toward, she said. Goro made a sound that had no translation in any language Nadia knew. She took it as agreement. She pulled on her jacket, and the iron ring on her right hand, old, dark, worn smooth by 3 generations of Volkov women, caught the light for just a moment before she closed her fist around it. The ship hummed. They left the dock before the syndicate's second message arrived. The trail was clean. That was the first problem. Sable had tracked over 60 targets in his career, and all of them, without exception, had made mistakes when they ran. Fear made people sloppy. Panic left fingerprints. But this woman, this one human woman on a mid-range cargo hauler, had left Orvith 9 with a filed departure log, a stamped cargo manifest, and not a single detail out of place, which meant she was not running scared. Sable stood in the empty docking bay and read the departure records again, slowly. His assistant, a young vet Hani named OSS, stood 2 steps behind him and wisely said nothing. She filed her next stop, Sable said. Yes, OSS said. Voluntarily. Yes. Sable rolled the records back further. The woman, Volkov, Nadia, human female, age 38, cargo license out of station near the edge of explored space, had not deviated from any standard shipping lane. She had not made any emergency burns. She had not tried to lose him in a debris field or behind a gas giant. She had simply gone where she said she was going, deeper into syndicate space. OSS cleared his throat carefully. She is moving inward, not outward. I noticed, Sable said. That is not standard prey behavior. I noticed that too. He filed his pursuit report with Director Savek's office and received a 1-line response. Expedite. He pocketed the handset and boarded his ship. He caught up to her at Kethdur, a way station depot roughly 12 hours from the syndicate's main distribution hub. It was a gray, crowded place, the kind of station that smelled like recycled air and old machinery and the particular tiredness of people who had been in space too long. He had 6 crew with him, all armed, all experienced. He had done this exact operation dozens of times. He watched Nadia's ship on docking camera for 40 minutes before moving in. She did not appear nervous. She unloaded 3 crates with her Thraki crewmate, logged them with the station registrar, and then walked into the interior corridor alone, carrying nothing but a small bag over one shoulder. He let her go 12 meters in before he cut her off. She turned when she heard them coming. Not startled, just turning, the way a person turns when they hear their name called in a quiet room. She looked at Sable, then at the 6 behind him, then back at Sable. Nadia Volkov, he said. By order of Director Savek, Orith Syndicate Intelligence Division, you are I know what I am, she said pleasantly. He stopped. She had not raised her hands. She had not stepped back. She was standing in the center of the corridor with her bag on her shoulder and her weight evenly balanced, and she was looking at him with an expression he had seen on very few faces in his career, the expression of someone who was not counting the people in front of them, but the exits behind them. She was counting his exits. He kept his voice professional. You will come with us quietly, or you have been following me since Orvith 9, she said. I know. I left the trail for you. She tilted her head slightly. You should ask yourself why. One of the crew behind him shifted. He heard it. Take her, he said. Nadia said something. It was in a language his translator took a moment to process. Something old, something with edges to it. And when the translation came through in his earpiece, it read, The house moves on chicken legs. You have already walked inside. Then the lights went out. Not a flicker. Not a gradual fade. Complete darkness, station-wide, the kind that pressed against your eyes and made the sounds around you suddenly very loud. He heard movement, fast, quiet, certain, and then 2 of his crew made sounds he did not like, and then nothing. When the emergency backup power kicked in 3 minutes and 11 seconds later, Sable was standing alone in the corridor. His 6 crew were alive. He confirmed that first, moving from one to the next. They were seated against the walls, sitting, not collapsed, which meant she had placed them there, and all 6 were unharmed. Their weapons were in a neat pile at the far end of the corridor, unloaded, the power cells removed and stacked separately beside them with a precision that felt almost insulting. None of the 6 would look at him that he asked what happened. Twice. 3 times. Only one of them answered, and she answered in a flat voice, staring at the floor. I don't want to talk about it. Sable found Nadia's bag abandoned near the far junction. He opened it. Inside was a single item, a small handwritten note on plain paper, which was unusual enough to be unnerving on its own. Humans rarely use paper anymore, it said. You are not the forest. You are the man who walked in without a map. Below that, in smaller letters, go back to Savek. Tell him what you saw. Tell him I'm still moving inward. He will not believe you, but tell him anyway. Sable stood in the corridor for a long time. Then he did exactly what the note said. Because he was a professional, and professionals adapted to new information, that he filed a minimum report. He noted the target was still mobile and moving inward, but he did not mention the note. He did not mention what his crew refused to say, that he sat down and stared at the wall. For the first time in a long career, Sable wondered if the salary was enough. Director Savek did not get where he was by being easily rattled. He had managed 3 hostile acquisitions, survived 2 internal power shifts within the syndicate, and personally overseen the quiet removal of 41 individuals who had become inconvenient. He was not a man who lost sleep, that he read Sable's report twice and then set it down with the kind of deliberate calm that was itself a performance. His assistant stood across the desk and waited. 6 operatives, Savek said. Disarmed. In the dark. That is what the report states. By 1 human woman. Yes, Director. He tapped the desk once with 1 finger. Send 12. His assistant hesitated, just barely, just a fraction, and then said, of course. What Savek did not know, because Sable had not included it in the report, was that 2 of the 6 had requested psychological evaluation upon returning to the ship. One of them, a Vethani with 11 years of field experience, had been found by a crew medic sitting on the floor of his quarters, repeating a phrase in a language he had never learned. The medic looked it up. The phrase was Russian. It translated, roughly, to, she already knows the way out. You are the one who is lost. The medic filed a quiet note and said nothing further than on a dull, gray diplomatic courier 3 days out from Kethdur. Counselor Drev was reading a news brief when the name Orith Syndicate appeared in connection with a leaked recording from a station called Orvith 9. The recording showed the murder of Ferric, the Thraki whistleblower whose filing Drev's own office had received 6 weeks ago and quietly set aside, that he watched the footage twice. Then he requested a full briefing on the current syndicate containment operation, using the polite official language that meant, tell me what is actually happening. What he received in return was a summary that described the operation as ongoing and the target as a single civilian human female. Drev had been in diplomacy for long enough to know that when a summary used phrases like ongoing for a target described as a single person, something had gone wrong that no one wanted to write down clearly. He requested assignment as an observer. Meanwhile, Nadia and Goro passed through 2 more syndicate checkpoints without incident. This was the part Goro could not fully explain afterward, even to himself. They had not hidden. They had not used false documents. They had walked through both checkpoints in plain sight. Cargo manifest open, Nadia answering the inspection officer's questions in her usual unhurried way, and both times the officer had waved them through. After the second one, Goro sat in the co-pilot seat and stared out at the stars for a long time. How? He said finally. People see what they expect, Nadia said, adjusting their course by 2 degrees. An armed fugitive looks like an armed fugitive. A cargo runner with a clean manifest looks like a cargo runner. She paused. I am a cargo runner. You disarmed 6 people in the dark. That was different. That was necessary. She checked a readout. These checkpoints are not looking for a woman who moves like she belongs here. They are looking for someone who runs. Goro thought about this. And you do not run. Running is a confession, she said. My grandmother told me that. Goro had stopped asking about the grandmother 2 days ago. Every time he asked, the answer was something that sounded simple and turned out to be deeply unnerving when he thought about it later. The 12 operatives Savek had found Nadia's ship docked at a neutral trade hub called the Orvith Belt Exchange. They confirmed the registry, confirmed the docking bay, and boarded with full authorization. The ship was empty, not abandoned, maintained, clean, everything in its place. but no crew. The only things out of the ordinary were a single iron ring resting on the captain's chair and a small audio device playing on a loop on the navigation console. Point one of the operatives pressed stop on the device. Another told him to press play again. Heated at IT was a voice, old, female, speaking in Russian, reciting something slow and rhythmic. The translator rendered it imperfectly, fragments about a forest, about a road that only appears to those who already know where they are going, about a fence made of bones that was not a threat, but a record. Point 3 of the 12 refused to stay on the ship after the first full loop. The remaining 9 searched every compartment, found nothing, and left a monitoring device near the entrance. By morning, the monitoring device had been moved. It was now sitting outside the docking bay door, facing the wall. Savek received this report and felt something move through him that he did not have a comfortable name for. But he called in his senior intelligence analyst and asked a question he had never asked in 20 years of operations work. "Tell me about human folklore," he said. "Specifically, Russian." The analyst blinked. "Director, sit down," Savek said, "and start from the beginning." The analyst sat. She pulled up her files. She thought for a moment about where to start. And then she started with the oldest stories, the ones from before cities, the ones that came from forests so deep that the light changed color when it came through the trees. That by the end of the first hour, Savek's expression had not changed, but he had not interrupted once, and he had stopped tapping his desk. The first thing to crack was the money, not dramatically, not with any announcement. One morning, the accounts that handled Savek's northern shipping contracts simply showed a flag from the Galactic Trade Regulation Office, a routine audit request, the kind that took 8 months to complete and froze movement of funds in the meantime. The flag had been triggered by an anonymous tip with supporting documentation. The documentation was extremely thorough. The second thing was the safe houses. There were 11 of them across 4 systems. By the end of the same week, 3 had been visited by local enforcement agencies acting on separate, unconnected tips from 3 completely different sources. Nothing was found at 2 of them because someone had clearly warned the occupants to move. The third one was found fully occupied, and that became a different kind of problem for the syndicate's legal team. Savek's senior analyst stood in front of his desk and said, carefully, "We believe the same person is responsible for all of it." "One person," Savek said. "We believe so, yes. The documentation style is consistent. The timing suggests a single coordinated actor working across multiple channels simultaneously. She is a cargo runner." The analyst chose her next words with great care. She was a wilderness survival instructor on Earth before she took her cargo license. The program she instructed in was a government-run course for people going into extreme environments. Duration, 6 months. Subjects included navigation, resource management, threat assessment, and she paused, psychological endurance under prolonged duress. Savek said nothing. She also, the analyst continued, spent 4 years working as a logistics coordinator for a deep-range exploration company before moving to independent cargo. She understands supply chains the way. She stopped. Start again. She understands them very well, Director. Goro, who did understand supply chains in his own right, had spent the past 4 days proving surprisingly useful that he knew people. Stations, docks, exchange hubs. Goro had been moving through syndicate-adjacent space for 12 years and had collected contacts the way certain kinds of ships collected hull scratches, gradually, inevitably, without ever quite planning to. He knew which dock supervisors filed their manifests late. He knew which freight coordinators had quiet grievances with the syndicate's pricing structure. He knew 3 different accounting clerks who, with the right approach and a secure channel, were willing to confirm which records looked unusual. Nadia gave him a list of questions. He found the answers. She built the files. She worked at the small table in the ship's galley, the same table where she had sat and drunk tea the night the kill order arrived, and she worked the way she did everything, quietly, without hurry, with the particular patience of someone who had been taught that the forest did not rush. Point one evening, Goro came in and watched her work for a moment. "You are not angry," he said. It was not an accusation. He was genuinely trying to understand. "No," she said. "They tried to have you killed." "Yes. And you are," he gestured at the screen full of financial records, "doing bookkeeping." She looked up at him. What would anger do? He had no answer for that. Anger is loud, she said, returning to the screen. Loud things are easy to prepare for. I am not interested in being easy to prepare for. Counselor Drev arrived at the Syndicate's observation post 2 days later. He had been assigned as an official Galactic Council observer on the containment operation, which meant in practice that he sat in a room and read reports and could not be denied access to information without triggering a formal inquiry that nobody wanted. He read the reports. He read all of them, including the ones that were not meant for observer distribution, because he had been doing this long enough to know which clerk to ask. He read about Kethdur. He read about the 12 operatives and the empty ship and the audio device. He read the folklore briefing that Savek had commissioned, which was 90 pages long and had a section on Baba Yaga that someone had highlighted and then, apparently, unhighlighted as if they had changed their mind about drawing attention to it. He requested a meeting with the cultural attaché assigned to the human diplomatic mission. She was a small, efficient woman who arrived with a data tablet and left it mostly unused. He asked her to explain Baba Yaga. She talked for 40 minutes. She talked about forests and old knowledge, and the particular quality of the Russian relationship with hardship. Not the romance of suffering, she was careful to say, but the practical understanding of it, the long cultural memory of enduring things that were supposed to break you and simply not breaking. The important thing, she said near the end, is that Baba Yaga does not chase people. She waits. She lets them come to her. And when they do, the forest already knows them. It has been watching since they took the first step. Drev looked at the map on the wall showing Nadia's last known position, still moving steadily inward through Syndicate space. Savek issued the kill order, he said. That was the first step. The attaché looked at the map too. Yes, she said. I think it was. Drev sat quietly for a moment. Then he asked to see all the reports again from the beginning because he wanted to understand exactly where things stood before the next part happened. He had a feeling the next part was going to happen soon. Savek made his mistake on a Thursday. It was not the kill order. That had been the first mistake, but it was also a private one, filed in a closed system, known only to his people. No, this mistake was public. This one he broadcast on an open diplomatic frequency, which meant Counselor Drev heard it in real time, sitting in his observer room with a cup of cooling tea in one hand and a look on his face that the cultural attaché, watching from the doorway, would later describe as a man watching someone step into a hole they could not see. Savek's message was short. He named Nadia Volkov directly. He called her a coward who dismantled things from a distance because she lacked the character to face a real confrontation. He said she had been evading capture because she was afraid. He told her to come forward and face the consequences of her actions, or he would begin levying sanctions against every human cargo license operating in Syndicate-adjacent space, that he told her to stop hiding. It took 4 hours for her to respond. Her reply came in on the same open frequency, calm, brief, and in perfect standard galactic. I accept. Your command station. 2 days. Goro read it over her shoulder and then left the room and stood in the corridor for a moment. She had already begun packing a small bag. This is the worst idea, Goro said, returning to the doorway. In the history of ideas. This is at the bottom. He needs to feel like he won, Nadia said, folding a spare shirt with complete serenity. People who feel like they won stop thinking clearly. He has a command station. With security. Yes. And you're going to walk into it. Yes. Goro pointed at the bag. That is a very small bag for a trap you are walking into voluntarily. I'm not bringing much because I will not be staying long. She set the bag down and looked at him. Wait with the ship. Do not let anyone board. Do not eat the emergency ration biscuits. I know exactly how many there are. He stared at her. That is what you were worried about? The biscuits. I am not worried about anything, she said. I just want the biscuits to be there when I get back. She left him standing in the corridor, which was, he reflected, becoming something of a recurring experience. Savek's command station was exactly what she expected. Large, secured, the kind of place built to project authority rather than withstand it. She was met at the dock by 6 armed guards and walked through 3 checkpoints and into a wide room with high ceilings and the kind of deliberate emptiness that was meant to make visitors feel small. Savek was seated at the far end. He looked at her the way powerful people often looked at smaller, quieter threats, with a performance of contempt that was really, if you knew how to read it, the beginning of uncertainty. She sat down across from him without being asked. She set a data drive on the table. "What is that?" he said. "A record," she said. "Complete. 43 counts of illegal asset seizure across 6 systems. 11 confirmed eliminations, including Ferric of the Thraki whistleblower filing, which you personally authorized. Money movement through 9 shell accounts, 2 already flagged by trade regulation, 1 in front of a galactic financial tribunal." She folded her hands. "Copies have gone to the Galactic Press, for council members, the Thraki Cultural Authority, and a human diplomatic archive that publishes automatically if I miss a check-in within 48 hours. She paused. "I sent that archive before I left my ship." Savek's expression did not change, but his hands, flat on the table, pressed down slightly. "You came here to threaten me," he said. "No," she said. "I came here because you asked me to, and because I wanted to give you a choice in person. That seemed more respectful than doing it remotely. You are one person. Yes, you have no weapons. I left them on the ship. I did not need them here." He stared at her. There was something in her stillness that he found, despite everything, deeply uncomfortable. She was not performing bravery. She was not managing fear. She was simply present, the way a very old tree was present, not threatening the space around it, just occupying it completely. He reached for the security panel on the arm of his chair, and a voice from the doorway said, "I would not." Counselor Drev stepped forward. He had been standing there for 4 minutes, listening, which neither of them had noticed because he was very good at being unobtrusive when the situation required it. He set his own credentials on the table. The official seal of the Galactic Council's Diplomatic Oversight Division. "This conversation," he said quietly, "is now on record, as is everything that preceded it." He looked at Savek without any particular expression. "The human is offering you a choice. I recommend taking it, loudly and voluntarily, before someone with less patience than she has decides the choice is no longer available." Savek looked at the data drive. At Drev. At Nadia. Nadia said nothing. She was waiting. She was very good at waiting. Her grandmother had taught her that too, that the person who could wait the longest in a silent room was never, truly, the weaker one. Savek took the choice. He said it clearly, on record, into the room. Nadia picked up the data drive, stood, and nodded to Drev. She walked back to her ship, collected the iron ring from her pocket where she had been holding it the whole time, and set it back on her finger. Goro was sitting exactly where she had left him. The biscuits were untouched. The tribunal lasted 9 days. Nadia attended 3 of them, which were the 3 that required her testimony. She arrived on time, answered every question directly, and left without speaking to anyone who had not spoken first. The press was there on the 2nd day, and several of them tried to get a statement from her in the corridor outside the hearing room. She told them she had nothing to add that was not already in the record. One reporter, a young Vedhani with a persistent expression, caught up with her near the docking gate and asked a different kind of question. "Were you scared?" he said. "Any of it? Even once?" She stopped walking. She thought about it. "Once," she said, briefly. "When?" "The corridor on Kethdur. Before the lights went out." She paused. "There was a moment when I counted 6 of them and thought about how many steps it was to the junction. What changed? I remembered what my grandmother told me about fear," she said. "That fear is useful for exactly as long as it takes you to make a decision. After that, you let it go and do the thing." The reporter wrote it down. She kept walking. Savek's formal statement had been comprehensive. He had, as Drev predicted, chosen loudly and on record. Full cooperation with the tribunal, full documentation of the syndicate's operations, testimony against 3 additional senior figures in exchange for a reduced but still significant sentence. His lawyers had managed the process well. The outcome was already decided before the first hearing day. The syndicate was formally dissolved by Galactic Council order on the 6th day. The decision was unanimous. Counselor Drev read it into the record in his usual calm voice, and then closed his folder and sat down. After the final session, he found Nadia near the observation windows of the tribunal building, a long row of floor-to-ceiling glass looking out onto the port district below. She was watching the ships move in and out of the docking lanes with the same expression she seemed to wear for most things. Patient, clear-eyed, not particularly impressed by any of it. He stood beside her and looked out at the same view. "I have one question," he said. "You can ask it," she said. "Did you know it would work? From the beginning, when you moved inward instead of running, did you know?" She considered this honestly. "I knew it was the right direction. Whether it would work depended on how many mistakes they would make." She watched a cargo hauler bank slowly into approach. People who believe they are powerful make predictable mistakes. They move too fast. They get loud when they are frustrated. They think that being loud is the same as being strong. Savek issued the public challenge, Drev said. He needed to feel like he was doing something, Nadia said. He had been watching things fall apart quietly for 2 weeks, and he could not find me to stop it. He needed to feel like he had taken the initiative. She glanced at Drev. I let him feel that. Drev was quiet for a moment. "There's a phrase in my culture," he said, "for force that moves without announcing itself, that shapes outcomes before anyone realizes shaping is happening. What does it translate to?" He thought about the translation. Something like still water that knows where the river goes. She seemed to consider this. "That is not bad," she said. He turned slightly to face her. "I read the folklore briefing. The full one, all 90 pages. He paused. "Baba Yaga is not a heroine in those stories. She is not kind. She is not gentle. But she is consistent. Fair in her own way. She does not move against people who have not earned it." "No," Nadia said. "She does not." "Savek earned it," Drev said. "He tried to erase a woman who witnessed something true," Nadia said. "And he did it without learning her name first. Without knowing anything about her except that she was small and alone and therefore trivial." She looked back out at the port. "My grandmother used to say that the most dangerous thing you can do is look at something and decide it does not matter. Because the things that matter most are usually the ones you did not bother to understand." Drev nodded slowly. "We did not know you," he said. It was not quite an apology. It was more like the honest acknowledgement of a mistake, the kind that a careful person makes once and does not repeat. "No," she said. "You did not." She picked up her cargo manifest from the window ledge where she had set it. She had already accepted a new delivery contract, 3 stops, starting tomorrow, and tucked it under her arm. "The Thraki whistleblower," Drev said before she could leave. "Ferric. His testimony is part of the tribunal record now. What he filed, what he found, it will matter." She stopped. Something crossed her face, brief and quiet, like the shadow of a cloud. "Good," she said. She walked to the docking gate, nodded to Goro waiting at the entrance with his 4 arms folded and a long-suffering expression that meant he'd been worried the whole time, but was not going to say so, and they went back to the ship. The iron ring sat on the captain's chair where she had left it. She picked it up and put it on. The ship hummed to life. And somewhere in the long memory of an old Russian forest that existed, now only in stories and in the bones of the women who carried them, something that had been watching simply turned away, satisfied, and was still.